Hi, this is Alex from phpacademy.org, and this is a video for the new Boston. Now, in this, we've already looked at, or within PHP My Admin, we've already looked at creating things, deleting things, but I'm going to use PHP Admin to just demonstrate some simple SQL queries, just so we understand the basic concept of queries, how they work and how they retrieve values, and also how to structure them, because that's very important. The minute we structure it slightly wrong, we'll be returned an error. We'll have an error in our syntax. So we've got a tab up here that I've just clicked called SQL. Now PHP My Admin will also automatically put in this little query from you: select star from users where one, and that's because we were on the browse tab here. By clicking on this, we're doing exactly the same as what we're doing on the browse tab. It will return everything from this table. There's no limits to this at all. It's just select everything, meaning star, from the table users, and where one is irrelevant. We can take this out. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to click go, and you can see that this has showing rows 0 to 1 and 2 total. Query took an amount of seconds, and it's shown our query here with this limit on the end, which I'll explain soon. But we've retrieved exactly the same data as if we were to click browse. So this SQL SQL query for us at the moment is useless inside PHP My Admin, but when we're working within PHP, we might want to select everything from the database. However, some advice for you is not to use select star, because what you're doing is, when you're selecting data from a database, you rarely will need all of it. I could just say select username, password. For example, if I was logging my user in, I'm not going to need to access their username or password, their first name or last name, to log them in, because this is irrelevant login details. We just need the username and password. So if we were to just say select username and then comma password, now bear in mind these have to exactly match your field names, and as with this here, you can enclose them in either semicolons or this slanted, not a semicolon, sorry, a single quotation mark, or this slanted apostrophe. So we're using an apostrophe here in our username and password. So now let's click go and see what happens. So what we've done is we've returned a query, but this time we've only selected a certain amount of data we want to be retrieved. So we've automatically cut time out of our query. You can see here it says 7 seconds. However, if we were to select everything, oh no, it's quicker. But yeah, okay, so my point there was rendered invalid. But when we're working within PHP, we're using lots of queries at once, or we're using joins, things like that, which you'll learn later, we want to be selecting as quick as possible. Plus, there's no need to select some amounts of data. So here I'm saying select username, password from users. Now at the moment we've got this where one. Where one's just going to select everything. So where one's true, so it's going to select everything. But what we can do is we can specify where we want to select this data in specifics. Now remember, we've got unique username fields, unique ID fields, sorry. And here we've got ID of 1 and 2 for Alex and Billy, and these are unique to this user. So let's say I just wanted to return from ID 1. All I need to do is say where ID equals 1, and we can put that in there as well. So where ID equals 1, so this is going to select the username and password from the users table, which we're in, where the ID is equal to 1. And we're not using a double equals here, we're just using an equals, because there's no assignment of data using this equal sign. So in PHP we use a double equals, but in structured query language we use an equal sign. So let's click go and see what happens. Unknown column 1. Right, okay, so let's go back to edit this. ID equals, okay, right, okay, no problem. So let's go back to SQL and we'll start again. So we want to select, I'll tell you why that error occurred in a minute, username, password from users where ID equals 1 without our apostrophes. So now we can click go, and our query was successful this time. So you can see what we've done is we've only selected Alex and password. So we've selected the username and password where the ID is equal to 1. And if we look back here, you can see that the ID at 1 matches Alex's data. So it's quite simple to grab the data that you need. Okay, so let's return to SQL. This time what I want to do is I want to perform a query which is going to retrieve the username and or the first name and the surname, but with this time we're going to specify a username and a password. Now if the username and password don't match, we're not going to return this data. However, if the username and password do match, we're going to return this data. So this is essentially a login system. And to do this, we're going to say select first name, last name. Remember, this is the data we want to display when we've selected it. And we don't need to put these in apostrophes, but it's probably good practice too. So first name, last name from users where, and this is where we specify the username and the password. Now if I was to say where username equals or is equal to Alex, and so we're using an operator here, we're saying and password, oh, not in capitals, equals Fred, for example, or password equals P123 or P. So what we're doing here is we're selecting the first name and last name. Like I said, we're going to be returning this data from the users table where username is Alex and password equals P. Now nowhere in this table does the username equal Alex and the password equal P. We've got username equals Alex and password equals password, and username Billy and password equals pass123. So what we're actually doing with this query here is we're returning no rows, and you'll see that when I click go in a moment. Now this has automatically told us that a username and a password combination is invalid, therefore a login cannot be processed. So let's click go. Okay, so we've got unknown column, last name, okay, surname. So this corrected query should now return, oh, username equals Alex, password equals P. Okay, let's try put that in them. Click go. Okay, so my SQL. So I've used apostrophes for this and just single quotation marks for the actual data itself. So MySQL returned an empty result set, i.e. 0 rows. So this query here that we've selected, Alex is for the username and P for the password, has returned no data. Therefore, the username may exist, but the password might be wrong. So in general, we have a username and password combination error. So now what happens if we run the query with the correct data in? So you can see that my username is Alex here, my password is password. So let's run this and see what happens.